So in today's episode, we're going to talk about how our boundaries multiply when we're dealing with toxic people. And when you first start to unpack that this person, this toxic person, they're causing all of this chaos, and you start to understand maybe they're the problem. You typically think that, okay, this one person is the problem. This person is the person I need to get under control, or I need to figure out how to navigate so that I can live the life that I want. However, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense at the beginning. But as you begin boundary setting with that person, right, you discover, okay, the best way to deal with this person is for me to establish some boundaries about how I'm going to allow this person into my life, right? You start to figure that out. As you do that, though, you slowly start to realize that the kind of boundaries you need in order to actually achieve the peace that you're looking for start to multiply, right? It's not just setting boundaries with a toxic person. You got to set boundaries with a whole bunch of things if you're going to succeed at this. That can be really frustrating. That can be really overwhelming. For a lot of us, when we're dealing with toxic people, we just want to deal with it and let's move on with our lives, right? They're taking up a lot of space. They're taking up a lot of time. We want to move on. And we absolutely can move on. But it turns out there's actually a lot of boundaries work to do. It's not just the boundary with the toxic person. So in this video, I'm going to go over a couple other typical spots where people have to set boundaries when they're navigating toxic people. And I'm going to let you know about a new program I have coming up that's going to help you with these boundaries and ultimately make peace with those boundaries. Let's get started. So one of the most frustrating things that we encounter, especially when we're dealing with toxic people who have narcissistic personality disorder, is that they have this ability to recruit the people close to them to do their dirty work. Those folks are called flying monkeys. It's named after the Wizard of Oz characters. You can check out last week's video if you want to know more about what flying monkeys are. But these are basically people who are in your life causing you problems. They're not the toxic person directly, but they're abusing you by proxy. So this is an obvious place, right, that's not directly the toxic person, but again, is going to require us to set some firm boundaries. Now, those boundaries might not be identical to the boundaries we have with a toxic person, right? Flying monkeys are a little bit more of a complicated case. Exactly how to deal with them is going to depend on your circumstance. But most likely, if you really want to keep your peace, if you really want freedom from toxic people, you're going to need to have some boundaries with flying monkeys. Even if it's not at the level of a flying monkey, you might also just have unsupportive family members, right? So these are people who are probably a little bit more distant from the toxic person directly. And these folks are, the kind of people that are like, oh, well, you should just be nice to your mom. It's your mom, right? Or oh, you should just accept the abuse from your father because he's your father, right? These kind of family members, although they might, we don't know for sure, but they might have just pure good intentions, they can cause us a lot of problems as folks trying to navigate toxic people. So even if they're not at the level of the flying monkey, where they're not actively abusing you, they're really just there causing you to doubt a lot of the things that are protecting you, that are improving your life, which probably the boundaries with a toxic person are doing those things, right? So they're planting these seeds of doubt and it's disturbing you. It's making you uncomfortable. Again, that's another place where you're probably going to have to set some boundaries. Another spot that you might need to set boundaries is with your friends or maybe even your coworkers, right? There are certain topics that are going to be more delicate for us as we navigate toxic people. If you were just in a really bad romantic relationship with a toxic person, you might not be ready to have conversations about dating and, trashing our ex, although you might be down for trashing your ex. That one might be on deck, but you might be feeling uncomfortable when you hear some of the things other people talk about and you realize that the things that you were dealing with were so much more severe, right? This can happen in a workplace, but it can also just happen with your friends, right? Let's say you need to go no contact with your toxic mother and your friends really want to talk about how big a celebration they're having on their mother's birthday. Right? That might be something that makes you uncomfortable. And if those people are authentically your friends, they don't want to make you uncomfortable. So you're going to need to try to set some boundaries and kind of let them know, hey, I appreciate that you have a great mom. I'm really happy for you, but those things are making me a little bit uncomfortable. So if it's okay with you, I'd prefer if we just didn't talk about that. Right? These can be very small boundaries. It's not like going no contact or low contact or those big things we need when we deal with the toxic people directly, but they are important boundaries if we're going to maintain our peace. So another spot that you might need to establish boundaries that you might not have anticipated when you started dealing with toxic people is your consumption of various kinds of media. So that might include social media, right? We know, like, if you're dealing with a toxic mother, the things you consume on Mother's Day on social media might be upsetting, right? We know that those are those big kinds of moments on social media, but even just in general on social media, you might need to get rid of some accounts that you follow. You might need to use your settings to make sure that you're not regularly ingesting stuff that's going to make you feel weird about the boundaries that are keeping you safe with the toxic people. So you got your social media stuff. You've got, like, it might impact when you're watching TV, right? It turns out that there's a lot of commercials that kind of promote happy romantic couples and happy nuclear families. And that might not make you feel good when you've just come out of an abusive space, whether in your immediate family or with a romantic partner. So you might need to make some decisions about how much of that kind of stuff you're going to allow into your life. For me, one of the things that gets me really going is movies. I tend to be pretty emotional when I'm watching movies, and if it's a movie that's really focused on something like the nuclear family, or it's really romanticizing, the kind of relationships I've had in the past with toxic people, I can get really upset, and that's not good for me. So I am careful when I do watch a movie that I think might be hitting on some of those notes for me. I make choices about when and how I do that. And again, that is a kind of boundary setting. So that's just one more way that you might not expect you need to set boundaries, but your media consumption is going to hit differently once you start working with boundary setting with toxic people. It would be really nice if all we had to do was establish boundaries with the toxic person. But the situation just isn't that simple. We do ourselves a disservice when we think, as we're navigating these spaces, that our only job is to try to get the toxic person out of our life or take up less space in our life. The truth is, once we start cleaning things up in that way, we're very likely to bump into other situations where we need to set some more boundaries. The good news is, typically the hardest boundary to set is the one with the toxic person. These other boundaries, because they're lower stakes, maybe with the exception of flying monkeys and things like that, the more distant these people are from the toxic person themselves, typically the easier it is to establish those boundaries. And if you're working with friends or things like that, these are people who typically have your best interest in mind. They are going to be more open to you communicating what you need from them. Now, if you're struggling on either establishing your boundaries, maintaining your boundaries, or making peace with your boundaries, I'm someone that can help. I coach folks one-on-one to work on these kind of boundary setting issues that come up as we're navigating toxic people. And I am starting a new course very shortly that's all about making peace with our boundaries. That's the stage where we really get freedom from all of these difficult things that we've been working with. And I will help you in that course integrate your boundary setting into some of your core values. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description below. And if you got anything out of this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. That really helps my channel, and I can't wait to catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.